Hey folks, Akwasi comedian here. Today I want to talk to you guys about a great Australian humanitarian that most of us probably haven't heard of. Now we've all seen this photo before, right? The white dude in the photo is a man by the name of Peter Norman. Now I want to talk about how this brave Australian played a role in this iconic image. Okay, picture this. It's the 200-meter final of the 1968 Olympics in Mexico. The two favorites are two African-American men, Tommy Smith and Jean Carlos. Now, as the race starts, it seems like these two men are going to win gold and silver. But right towards the end of the race, out of nowhere, an Australian by the name of Peter Norman comes flying down to beat Jean Carlos, and Peter Norman gets second place. Nobody expected this. He was so fast that he set an Australian record that has not been beaten to this day, 2020. The dude was a freak athlete, unlike our previous Prime Minister, John Howard. Now, the 1960s is well known for the civil rights movement. It's also a time where leaders were being assassinated left, right, and center. We had Patrice Lumumba, we had Bobby Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, and of course, Martin Luther King, and so many more. So to say that it was a scary time to protest would have been an understatement. And that's exactly what Tommy Smith and Jean Carlos planned on doing with the help of Peter Norman. As the two Americans walked towards the podium to receive their medals, they took off their shoes to protest against poverty across America. They also wore beads to protest against lynching across the country. And in the greatest symbol in Olympic history, during the American national anthem, they put black gloves on, bowed their heads, made a fist in solidarity with the civil rights movement. Right now, a lot of you are thinking, well, how the hell does Peter Norman fit into the story? Well, when they got to the medal ceremony, Jean Carlos realized that he had left his pair of black gloves back at the Olympic Village, so they had to improvise. Luckily for them, they had Peter Norman standing right there. And well, we all know how Aussies love a shortcut. Bottle shop? Nah, bottle-o. Oh yeah, Macca's. Welcome to Australia. Peter Norman said, righto, fellas, you blokes still have a pair of gloves. Why don't one of you wear the left and the other wear the right? And the two Americans were like, Peter, you the man. You the man. Peter's like, hey, listen, I'm more than happy to help support you guys. I actually want to do this. Well, how can I help you guys? And at that time, there was a crest called the Olympic Project for Human Rights. They were trying to find him a crest, couldn't find one. And an American rower, when he found out that a white Australian wanted to help with this protest, they're like, oh, hell yes. Here, you can have my crest. And so Peter wore that on the podium. That was a big deal because back in those days, Australia had the strong restrictions against non-white immigration, also openly discriminated against Indigenous people in Australia. Peter Norman was seen as a traitor. So as he was preparing for the next Olympics, the 1972 Olympics in Munich, he qualified 13 times for the 200 meters and 5 times for the 100 meters. An Australian Olympic Committee refused to let him in. He and his family were outcasts. He was forced to work as a butcher and also as a PE teacher. Now, I'm not saying those jobs are bad, but that's not the job that he wanted to do. Later in life, the Australian government gave Peter Norman the opportunity to condemn the two American athletes for their protest in 1968 in exchange for a pardon and the opportunity to be a part of the preparation for the 2000 Olympic Games. And Peter Norman was like, really? They didn't even allow him to march in the 2000 Olympic Games. As an Australian legend, they said, no, we're not going to let you march. In 2006, Peter Norman died, and his two really good friends, Jean Carlos and Tommy Smith, who he had kept in contact with over the years, acted as pallbearers at his funeral. It's heartbreaking to see how this man was treated by the Australian government for the rest of his life after 1968 for simply acting like a human being. Peter Norman should never be forgotten. In 2012, the Australian Parliament apologised to Peter Norman. They said, we acknowledge the bravery of Peter Norman in donating an Olympic Project for Human Rights badge on the podium in solidarity with African-American athletes Tommy Smith and Jean Carlos, who gave the Black Power salute. They went on to say apologies to Peter Norman for the treatment he received upon his return to Australia and the failure to fully recognise his inspirational role before his untimely death in 2006. Parliament finished off with, "We belatedly recognise the powerful role that Peter Norman played in furthering racial equality." Bro, but I posted a black screen on Instagram. I mean, what else do you want from me? Simply feeling bad for how a group of people are being treated does nothing. Proactive support and a collective change in our mental attitude is what is required for us all to move forward as human beings.